joining you live with this beauty. Introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna type it in.
Type it in there. So my name is Lori Christine King, also going by LCK. We're going to be talking all the nutrition, all of women's health, hormones, hormonal birth control. So you guys feel free, drop questions, and we'll try to answer them as well. But otherwise, we're just going to go through. Jen's going to be asking me questions, and then we'll just kind of do a Q&A.
Yes. Men, we will be talking about differences between men and women as well. So it'll be interesting for you to know. And if you have a partner, really interesting for you to know if you're dating a female. But women, this is going to be huge. It's going to be powerful. So call your girlfriends, get them on. So let's dive in, yeah?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I have her in LA today, so this is super exciting. Those leggings, thanks.
I was going to say, I really love those. What brand are those?
They're Aloe.
Love it. Of course they are.
I know, fucking Aloe.
Course.
All right,
yes.
So first thing first, I think talking just the difference between male and female hormone and how that changes throughout this. This literally just started right when we were about to go live, so this is exciting as well.
Yeah, let us know if you're having trouble hearing us. Just let us know, and we can always adjust and move where we're at as well.
Yeah.
So as far as actual women's health, basically I think society kind of does us a disservice. Nobody explains to our cycle. So most people know hey, once a month I have a menstrual cycle, or at least we hope. But most people don't know anything beyond that. And so the biggest thing is just, there are actual 4 different parts to our menstrual cycle. And so for 2 weeks, basically, we are producing estrogen. About the middle of our cycle, we ovulate or we drop an egg, and then for the remaining 2 weeks, we're basically seeing a boost in progesterone. And so that last 7 days, when we don't have a baby, that's when we shed the lining, that's when we have our cycle. And so it's just a little bit more complex. And so it's not that men don't have these hormones, because they have estrogen, they have everything in the body, it's just totally different. And so even, if we want to talk about differences between men and women, women literally get a monthly feedback report on the state of their health. And so, if every month, you dread when your cycle is coming, right? People have this connotation that oh, your menstrual cycle should be, super painful. You should have tons of PMS, all these symptoms. It's that actually means you're really, really unhealthy. And that's the body's way of trying to tell you hey, we should consider adjusting your nutrition. We should consider adjusting our environment and the things we're exposed to, your lifestyle, and stuff like that. And so it's on the guy's side, obviously they have testosterone. So they actually get, a daily report where it's hey, every morning do you wake up and have a morning boner? Do you want to have sex with your wife or your spouse or your partner? Cool, they get daily feedback. Women, we get monthly feedback. And so, if you want to talk on surface level, women are put on this earth, whether or not we like to admit it, women are put on this earth to have babies. And so if you don't have a menstrual cycle, that's a really big cue of hey, health isn't so great, because it's your it's your body's way of saying, hey, you're not healthy enough to do what you were put on this earth to do. And so again, just kind of raising awareness that periods should be painless, they should be symptomless. That's the best feedback I get as a coach is hey, my period started today and I had no idea. Heck yeah, that's feedback, I'm doing my job. You're really, really stinging well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the hugest thing, and a lot of studies that have at least were put out was a lot on men. And it's not the same. It's not the same for nutrition. It's not the same for supplements. It's not the same for lifestyle. It's so different. And really acknowledging the fact that your period shouldn't be painful.
Completely.
Is huge.
And so I'm sure people that are watching this are oh, that's me, right? I have really bad PMS, or
Midol.
right? Where's the Midol? Where's the heating pads? And it's understanding is just the first step. If you guys love educational resources, the Period Repair Manual by Laura Briden will literally change your life.
Say that one more time.
It's the Period Repair Manual by Laura Briden. It's $15 on Amazon, but it literally walks you through step by step, oh, you're suffering with this symptom, here's how to remedy it, or here's how to improve it. But even talks about, so many women take hormonal birth control but don't actually realize the different ways that it impacts them. And so just raising that awareness that oh, like you've been on hormonal birth control, 5, 10, 15 years. Like, did you know that it impacts your gut flora? Did you know that it increases inflammation? Did you know it impacts your thyroid? So, for a lot of people, it's like, maybe you're struggling with, that, and that was my case. Was at 16 years old, I had really, really bad acne, and like, I was absolutely that friend where it was like, yeah, I'm gonna be missing school this week, like I'm on my menstrual cycle, like it would be, 10 to 12 days long, super heavy, super painful, and
10 to 12 days?
10 to 12 days. And so, when I went to the doctor and they're like, oh, just take this pill, like, and sure enough, like.
And you went on, they prescribed you birth control.
Yeah, so they prescribed me birth control, I took the pill, and so the thing was 2 years later, I was diagnosed as hypothyroid. And so for people that aren't familiar, hypothyroidism, basically, your thyroid is a gland in your neck that it controls absolutely everything in the body. So think metabolism, think, your ability to regulate temperature, your ability, like how you sleep at night. Like if you can't lose weight, like if your metabolism isn't happy, if your thyroid's not happy, like it's kind of that whole happy wife, happy life. Like if your thyroid's not happy, like you're not going to lose weight. You're going to be putting on fat, all this stuff. And so I'm not new to the coaching game, been doing it for years and years. And so for the past 10 years, I have blood work pulled on the regular every 6 months. And it was like, I'm doing everything right. Like I know how to eat well, I know how to, like I had cleaned up my environment. So, I was using all natural skincare, body care, all of that stuff. I was doing the supplementation. It was like, I still never pulled optimal thyroid values. And so like, that was the biggest thing was
interesting.
The one thing I never thought to change was the fact that I was on hormonal birth control. And so sure enough, started doing research. So I think a couple of people were again asking what the book I mentioned was. It was the Period Repair Manual by Laura Briden. Another great one is The Hormone Cure by Sarah Gottfried. But both of them are just books that talk about the different ways that hormonal birth control impacts you. And so sure enough, earlier this year I kind of did my research and I did all the prep for it, and so I transitioned off of hormonal birth control, and probably about 3 months later.
Sorry, video is paused.
Whoop, we gotcha. But yeah, so I transitioned off hormonal birth control, and then it was about 3 to 4 months later I pulled lab work, and sure enough, like my thyroid values improved. And like even present day, like I don't take medication anymore because the underlying issue was actually the hormonal birth control. And so I think it's worth mentioning, like it's not that hormonal birth control is right or wrong. Like the question to always ask is it right for me? And so it's understanding, how different things impact you. And then again, are they fitting in the constraints of, how you want to look, how you want to feel, stuff like that. So it's like for a lot of women, it's like, hey, if you're super active, if you're doing all the right things, but you're still not seeing this success, like that's where you have to look at the different things in your lifestyle and say, oh, that's crazy. I have, an IUD, or, oh, I've been taking the pill for 5, 10, 15 years. And then assessing again, like you're never going to know until you try, right? It's like worst case scenario, like you transition off, you see what happens. And, but again, like I think it's everybody deserves to live their best life on terms that work for them. And so it's understanding, because most doctors don't go through those symptoms. Like nobody said like to 16-year-old Lori, hey, so you might actually end up with an autoimmune issue and have thyroid antibodies as a result of taking this. Are you okay with taking it? Like the conversation should have been like, hey, well, like, your diet kind of sucks. Like, like at the time I was 15 or 16.
Yeah,
so
it was like, I was eating all the things.
Right, like I was eating like cookies, and my diet was probably like Red Bull and garbage, and like I loved like drugstore cosmetics and drugstore makeup and all this stuff. But again, when you go to the doctor, like they have 7 to 8 minutes. You have a symptom. They have to provide you a solution. So it's a really tidy and clean catch-all to say, oh, just take this pill or just have this IUD, like because it is. It's going to put a Band-Aid on the solution. It's going to give you symptom relief, but it can't fix those symptoms. And so that's the thing is, if you transition off the pill, if you get off your hormonal IUD, they're gonna come right back. And so Jolene Brighton is another awesome person in the space. If you guys don't follow
her. And guys,
her.
I will tag all these resources in my story after this. So we're gonna go through multiple resources. So I know a lot of people want me to pin the book right now. I want to continue to get as much information out of this one as I can. So I'm not gonna stop and pin the book right now, but I promise, go check my story after this, and all the resources, you can just screenshot that and all the resources will be there. So I promise you, it's coming.
And like worth mentioning too, my entire Instagram is literally just an educational platform.
Yes.
And so these are things that
This
I
is
write
why
about.
I found her and I love her. I stalked her and I was like, what is this? This is amazing. She's just like information after information on all of this stuff that we're talking about. So you're getting like a snapshot of it all, which is amazing.
Yep, so a lot of this stuff, like I've literally written in depth about it on my Instagram. So everything from low testosterone, hopefully there are guys in here. I love talking about wieners on the internet, so there's tons of low testosterone resources as well. But it's all in my Instagram feed as well for you guys.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely get you taken care of on the knowledge bomb side for sure.
Yes, excited for that. Okay, so when did your acne cleared up after you got off birth control? How long were you on birth control for?
So I continuously took birth control for over 10 years. And so I didn't have a cycle because, again, my doctor was like, well, if you're going to miss work or you're going to miss school, like just keep continuously taking the pill. And so that's the thing is most people don't realize hormonal birth control actually completely overrides your own hormone functions. Like you do not have hormones on, if you have the pill, if you have the IUD, like it literally, it's like it walks in, it presses the off switch, and then you're overridden. And so for a lot of people,
and that's a fake period, right?
Correct.
Every month you're bleeding, but that's not a real period.
And so Laura Bryden likes to refer to it as a pill bleed because, again, it's not an actual, like, it's not your menstrual cycle. You're not ovulating. You're not producing progesterone. And so I coined the term that hormonal birth control is doctor prescribed hormonal imbalance. And a lot of people like that's a bold statement, right? And people are like, oh, like, doctor prescribed hormonal imbalance, but it is because, again, if we understand that the way that the female body works, if we understand the way that our hormones work, like we should see an increase in estrogen, we should ovulate and drop an egg, and then we should produce progesterone. The only way that we produce progesterone in the body is if we ovulate. And so you basically have the seesaw that, estrogen should be on one end, progesterone should be on the other. And it's just like this, like we've got all the estrogen, but you're not producing that progesterone. And so progesterone is the thing that should come to the rescue, where it's like estrogen left to its devices, estrogen isn't bad. Estrogen is what makes us a woman, it gives us curves, it's wonderful. But left to its own devices, like too much estrogen or too much of anything is, always, that's never a good situation. So that's how you end up with scenarios where it's like, oh, like, maybe I struggle with a lot of bloat or constipation around my period, or like my, especially like mood swings are huge for people. So you talk about like people that have PMDD, or like it's basically, really, really bad mood swings and really bad like mood disorder right around, before and after your cycle. It's because, again, like you just have all this estrogen that's like, it's this very, it's like the dance partner that just, takes over and kind of runs with it. And so, yeah, like that's a big thing. It's like, again, people don't realize, like people think, oh, I'm taking the pill, like it's, these are the same things in my body. It's like, no, it's not.
It's not.
Even a lot of the chemicals that are in the pill or in the IUD, like when you look at them chemically, levonorgestrel is the biggie that you see very commonly. And so it's supposed to act like progesterone in the body. It's actually a progestin, and so chemically it looks very similar, but not quite the same. And so it actually acts more like testosterone in the body.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's why sometimes, you'll see people where, they have the pill, they have the IUD, whatever, and maybe they start getting weird symptoms where it's like, oh, like I'm getting hair growth in weird places, or, I'm having hormonal acne. Like, again, it's because you're going down a testosterone pathway, and like, it's not that we're not supposed to go down it, because, women need testosterone as well. Like, all genders need all the hormones. But it's, again, like that Goldilocks and the Three Bears of like, we want just the right amount of everything. Right. But that's also, the same reason why, you see a lot of females where it's like, maybe you go to the gym and, you work out all the time and stuff like that. Like, hormonal birth control is going to tank out your testosterone levels. Like, if we pulled lab work, you're going to see really low T. And so you have all these females where it's like, killing yourself going to the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week. and you don't look like you lift, or like you're not necessarily seeing the adaptations that you would think, like, wow, you work out a lot, like you should have a very, you know, athletic frame, or you know, it's, so that's always just something worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, that's huge. Something came to my mind. I don't know if this is like politically correct to talk about, but I would love to like get your quick take on it if you feel comfortable talking about it. When we go into transgender and we take other hormones on, what could that be doing within your body?
Interesting. So I'll be honest, it's something I don't personally have a whole lot of experience with, but to maybe tilt it to something that's more common would be, you know, it's very common for people to go through fertility treatments, or like, hey, you know, we're trying desperately hard to have a baby, we can't have a baby, and so people will go through some sort of, you know, hormone replacement therapy, or, you know, we're introducing, and so I think that's worth mentioning that, like, ironically, the pill, or, you know, hormonal IUDs and stuff, it's all the same synthetic chemicals that, again, you know, like, you end up just super saturating the human body with. And so it's a bummer, because it's like, here we have this conventional model that kind of says, hey, you know, when you're in your 20s and you don't want to get pregnant, just take this pill, or just take this prescription. And then, you know, you know, most people think, oh, it's super simple, right? Like, I can just get off the pill, 3 to 1, I can have a baby. Like, people don't realize that, again, like, everything we do in life has consequences, right? And so if for, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we turn off the body, we turn off our hormones, like, you can't just expect things to instantly come back. And so where I was going earlier was Jolene Brighton basically coined the term of post-birth control syndrome. And so it's just this idea that, you know, again, did your doctor tell you that you may get off the pill, and then for, you know, 6 months to a year or years, you may not see a restoration of your menstrual cycle. You may struggle really, really bad with acne. You may struggle with all these symptoms that, again, you know, your hormones were suppressed, so like we kind of have to go the bell curve of like we have to upregulate everything before it can kind of smooth out in the middle. And so same thing, you know, like we're always talking about like if you never address the root cause of your issue. So if you had really miserable periods and then you took the pill, but you didn't adjust your nutrition, or you know, you're scamming, like really, you know, like in an ideal world, you know, we want to see people eating a protein, a carb, a fat, a veggie at every single meal. You know, we want to watch, you know, sugar isn't the devil, but we also shouldn't be eating like 200 grams of sugar. You know, we shouldn't be eating cookies and ice cream and stuff like that, like all day long, every single day, you know. And so, you know, all this stuff, it's like, if you didn't adjust for the fact of like, oh, hey, you're sleeping 5 hours a night, like go to bed, like sleep 8 hours a night, or hey, like you're exercising, like there is such a thing as, you know, too much exercise, you know, if you didn't address the root issue of why you're having those symptoms in the first place, well, yeah, like A, you're going to get off the pill, you know, you're going to suppress those symptoms, but B, like, again, everything has to upregulate. And so, especially if people go on the pill, to remedy skin stuff, it's very, very common for your skin to get much, much worse before it gets better, because again, it has to upregulate before it can level out.
Wow.
So I know even for me, I think it was around like month 4 or 5, it wasn't that my face was breaking out, it was just so oily. And so hormonal birth control suppresses sebum production. And so it was like I had like a couple weeks where it was like my skin is so oily that like I can't wear foundation, I can't wear makeup. It was just like oil slick.
Wow.
But
and
like
that eventually leveled out and went away.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So even like oily skin, because I've grown up all the time always saying like, oh, I have super oily skin.
And again, you know, like everybody, we don't live in a vacuum, so it's always a multifaceted thing.
Totally.
But for so many people, it's like, hey, you know, can we be using natural skincare products?
Yeah.
Can we, like, if you guys want an awesome company, like, this is actually like a good catch-all. Beauty Counter is amazing, and so I just recently started checking them out. But basically, they're super picky about everything that goes in their products, and so if you want good, you know, skincare, body care, again, like laundry soap is even like a biggie. But like kind of looking at your environment, it's like we're exposed to so many things via our foods. Like, are we buying, you know, really high quality foods where it's like grass-fed meats, you know, and stuff like that? Or like, are we buying $2 chuck? Like, well, like we are what we eat. So if you're eating really low quality food, like that's going to come back negatively to you in a health perspective as well. But then even just like basics, right? So it's like, do you go to bed, like how many hours are we sleeping at night? Because if your body doesn't have time to rest and recover, so getting people to sleep at night, are we drinking enough water? How is our fiber? Because again, like if our digestion sucks, like 10 times out of 10, if your digestion's not great, if you deal with a lot of gas, bloating, etc., I guarantee you, like your menstrual cycle is also pretty horrific. Or like if you're a male, like you're probably going to see really messy testosterone levels as well, because like we don't live in a vacuum and everything plays into each other. So it's really just looking at the basic tenets of like, I don't want to say like, are you living life like an asshole, but like, basically, like it's getting people to kind of just assess, what they're doing, and then seeing, is there places we could be improving? Or same thing, like our food just isn't as nutrient dense as it used to be. And so kind of my main staples, I love to see people supplementing stuff like zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, B complexes, kind of like the core.
Say those a little slower.
So supplementation wise, make sure we're supplementing things like zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, a B complex. Like those are my core staples.
Those
like,
are my core staples
whether
too.
that's like competitive athlete, whether that's
especially if you've been on the pill and birth control for
correct.
a really long time, magnesium and B, right, is going to be like
so crucial. And even like if we want to talk symptom wise, like if you're somebody where you're like, man, I really struggle around the time of my cycle, like magnesium for stuff like cramps, stuff for bloating, it's going to help regulate all that out. Zinc is so crucial for good skin. And so again, hormonal birth control depletes all of these. And so I usually recommend to people like try to supplement all those as soon as possible. But especially if you're like, hey, I don't think that hormonal birth control is right for me, I want to try something else. Like those are your staples. That's like supplement those for a month or two before we even consider transitioning off, because if the tank is already empty, it's only going to get emptier.
Exactly.
Because the body's going to be very stressed out, and you're just trying to rebalance and upregulate a lot of things that have been suppressed for a while.
Oh my God, so huge. I had a question in my head and I totally just like blanked going into everything you were talking about. That was all super amazing. And I think like the main facts that people get to like really learn from this too, how different men and women are, but not only that, how different we are as like person to person. So female to female, so different. That's why it's like we can't recommend a one size fits all for anything, for any food, for any gut health, for any, like it gets to be dependent on your body. That's why getting levels read, like where do you recommend people go to get their levels read and stuff though? Because that's really hard. Like you can go get a blood work test done, but like who's actually going over that with you, and how do you know what needs to be read?
So blood work is super fascinating. So I think it's worth mentioning that if you're taking hormonal birth control or if you have a hormonal IUD, blood work is pretty null and void, because again, like you could go spend $400 and I can tell you exactly what the lab work's gonna say. Like it's not your actual hormone levels, so it's not gonna tell you anything. And so even if you decide to transition off of hormonal birth control, you typically want to wait 3 to 4 months being free of your birth control before you actually elect to draw any sort of blood work. Dutch test is actually the most comprehensive. It does all the hormones, all the metabolites. So like, if something's broken in the chain, it's going to tell you exactly where things are going wrong. So even if you talk, say, like estrogen levels, technically there's 4 types. One of them we only produce when we're pregnant, so we'll just say 3. But understanding there's certain pathways that you go down where it's like that might mean you're more prone to have breast cancer, or you're more prone to have certain health stuff. And so it's actually super useful to know those, regardless of whether you're taking birth control or not. But same thing, maybe you're someone that's struggling with acne. That's related to going down a DHT and testosterone pathway. So it's like, oh, okay, if I draw the blood work, I have very specific pointers of, hey, these are things that I could supplement, or these are changes I can make that are going to help remedy that and get it right back to, the actual thing. So the crummy thing is that, if you go to your doctor, it's like if you say, hey, I think I have symptoms of thyroid stuff, right? So that would be like, feeling cold all the time, inability to lose weight, not being able to sleep at night, constipation and weird GI stuff. If you go to the doctor and you say, hey, I want to get my thyroid checked, your doctor's probably not going to pull the right things. And so you actually need 4 different markers just for thyroid stuff alone. And that's TSH, you need free T3, you need free T4, you need TPO, which is thyroid antibodies. And so like you have to go to your doctor with a very rigid set of like, hey, this is the type of lab work that I want to pull. Because again, with thyroid stuff, well, it doesn't matter what your messenger hormone is. Like, it matters what the actual, how much actual thyroid hormone are you producing. But even with, like, for women's health stuff, it's hard because you have to draw, certain times during your cycle. And so a lot of times people will be like, oh, my doctor's awesome. Like, they pulled this full hormone panel. And so you're like, okay, well, like, what day did you pull? And you're like, I have no idea. And
yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
Well, that's not helpful because, again, we only produce progesterone during, a certain part of our cycle. So usually they say it has to be day 19 of 21 of your cycle. So, like, day 1 of your cycle would be, your first day of basically your period or the first day that you bleed, so you would count 19 to 21 days out. But again, so many women will be like, on a Tuesday I got blood work done, and you're like, okay, this isn't super helpful. So there's Dutch test is great. It's actually a dried urinalysis, and so that's why it's the most comprehensive. Another one that's slightly cheaper would be Everly Well. Same thing, it has you draw blood twice, so it has you draw blood during your cycle, and then same thing, you count out to day 19 to 21. And that one's actually nice because you do it right in the privacy of your home. So literally, you prick your fingers, you fill out a little paperwork, you ship it off, and then in a few weeks they send it back. And they actually even do like a consultation call afterwards to kind of go over the results.
Amazing.
So I've done theirs, and theirs is great too because they roll thyroid stuff right into it as well. So Everly Well or Dutch test would be the 2 ways to go. But like I said, like timing is so important on that. So you have to know when you're pulling it and what you're doing in that regard.
When do you recommend doing it?
Usually, like I said, so you have to be free of hormonal birth control for 3 months, but you're looking at the day 19 to 21 of your cycle every month is when you would pull those. Another good topic to cover might be, because some people will be like, oh, like maybe let's get off hormonal birth control, like awesome. What do I do if I don't want babies? Or a lot of people do, a lot of people take hormonal birth control simply because they don't want to be on birth control. So like, okay, what's my options? Because I don't want to use Trojan condoms. I was just going to ask about this because people are probably like, okay, now I can't be on birth control. What do I do now? So welcome to 2018. There's a company that I love. It's called Daisy Fertility Tracker. Normally I have it like on me in person. But,
I have Daisy.
Yeah, it's back in my apartment. Yeah. But basically, welcome to 2018. It's literally a medical device that every single morning when you wake up, it's a very, very, we'll call it like a fancy thermometer. And so you literally stick it in your mouth for 60 seconds, and then like it's so cut and dry because it's, red equals no, aka use protection, abstain from having sex, whatever it is. Green equals like no, you're in the clear. And so it's 99.4% accurate. It's backed by 30 years of medical research and studies, and like I said, it's a patented algorithm that they take everybody's data and compile it, and so it's like it's going to tell you like even I think they say like it takes 3 track cycles for it to be that 99.4% accuracy.
It takes a while. Mine was like yellow for like ever.
Yellow.
Tell me what I am.
But it's so cool, and so like most people think like, oh well, I don't have a boyfriend right now, like I don't need to know about my cycle. And it's like, no, it's actually really empowering to know like, oh hey, like I'm ovulating right now, or oh hey, like is my mood getting a little funky? Oh, well, I'm about to start my period, that makes sense. And so it is like, it's very, very empowering, and it's very cool to understand your body and just, how to, understand what's going on and stuff like that. So Daisy Fertility Tracker is amazing. So that would be like my number 1 recommendation. There are a couple other brands out there that are a little bit cheaper,
there's like
but
Flow and stuff like that, but I don't think it's as accurate. I know for that one, I think it's just the app. Yeah. So you're not measuring anything within your body, as far as I know.
Yeah, but my thing is like, I understand like money is a struggle, but it's like babies are expensive. And that's the goal, right? Like if we're not trying to have a baby,
now.
Spend the $100 is like team no babies. Yeah. Or certainly it's obviously like maybe a good talking point is like, I think people, they go, oh, I'm ready to have a baby, and then they try for a baby every day. It's like, well, you can only get pregnant when you ovulate. So there's actually maybe like 5 days. So like right in the middle of your cycle, So basically, let's say you had your period today, like 2 weeks from now would be the time to be like, okay, like let's try to have a baby. So that's worth mentioning, but that's also worth mentioning on a pregnancy side as well. Is like, okay, well, like understand that that's the window when we can get pregnant. They say sperm survives up in the body for up to 4 to 5 days, and so that's why it's not just like, oh, there's 2 days, or 1 day that you can get pregnant. They kind of widen out that window. But again, like there's been so many cool studies talking about other countries where like they actually get sex education, they get body awareness, and like there isn't rates of teenage pregnancy through the roof, because again, like most people, it's like, oh, when's your cycle? Oh, I don't know. Like it showed up today. Oh my God, surprise. But now
we're so disconnected from our bodies in that way.
Yeah. And so there's so many apps that, let you track your cycle. There's so many apps that let you, track your symptoms and stuff like that too, because the goal should be that it's getting better every single month. A lot of people don't realize that like your present day cycle is also indicative of 3 months before. So like 3 months ago is when your follicles present day that are showing up. Like, so for example, let's say that, present day, you're like, man, my cycle this month was horrific, like bad cramps, super heavy bleeding. You want to dial back and look at, oh, well, what was I doing 2 to 3 months ago? Mm-hmm. Oh, I was cutting for a weightlifting meet, so I wasn't eating enough food, like body was super stressed out. Now that makes sense. And so the goal is every single month, is it getting better or is it actually getting worse? Yeah. So same thing, it's feedback where it's like, if you're not paying attention to that, like you wouldn't know to make changes or you wouldn't know. So just kind of, a thoughtful thing. And so that's the same thing as well as, again, people get off the pill and they're like, oh my gosh, my first bleed was so horrific. And it's like, well, yeah, like your body was suppressed, so like things might be a little crummy, but like the thing is it getting better every single month? And if it's not, or even, say you're doing everything right and then we're still having all these symptoms, like that's where it's like, hey, you need to get to the doctor and rule out stuff like endometriosis, like adenomyosis, like fibroids, like cysts. Because it's not uncommon. They say 1 in 10 women has endometriosis, and so it's basically where
so crazy.
It's your uterine lining.
And we don't even have a cure for it yet.
No, basically your uterine lining starts growing in places that it's not supposed to, and so if you're somebody that you're like, hey, the symptoms of my cycle are that I throw up because pain is so bad, like 10 times out of 10, like I've called that where it'd be like, you need to call your doctor immediately, and then sure enough, they would do testing and be like, yep, endometriosis.
And unfortunately, the only test truly for endometriosis to find out if you have it is going in endoscopically.
Yes.
But especially if you're like wanting or thinking of like having children soon or anything like that, it's a safe test to do with a doctor.
Totally.
So it would be something to do if your pain has been that extreme.
Yeah.
And especially like I just want to say real quick too, like not just getting off birth control right before you're going to get pregnant, because even within my family, I know many issues with that. My sister had a lot of issues with it because, like you said, it could take a year or years for your body to rebalance after your birth control. So if you're thinking of having kids and you think, let me just be on birth control, then I'll get right off and we'll have a baby.
It doesn't.
Like most of the time, does like never happen like that.
And Jolene Brighton has actually been publishing, this was literally a few days ago, she was putting up content talking about how studies actually show like infertility can actually be an issue because it's altering your uterine lining and stuff like that. So it's like if you don't have a hospital place for the baby, you're not going to get pregnant, or you might be somebody that's dealing with tons and tons of miscarriages.
Yeah.
So to kind of cycle back, we were talking about other ways to prevent pregnancy that are just natural. Again, like it's 2018, so like there are things beyond the Trojan condom. A couple of brands include it's Lilo Hex, there's My One, and there's Sustain.
And what are those?
They're all just condom brands at present day, they're on the more natural side, so they're not full of, funky ingredients. Like the Trojan thing, I think it's just like a lot of cheap, rubber and like gross chemicals and stuff like that. But again, when you understand how a certain, how you could feel, and when you understand, oh my gosh, like I transitioned off of hormone birth control and I don't feel like dog shit, or like I don't have crazy mood swings, I don't feel a certain way, like then you're okay with, oh well, okay, like maybe sex is slightly different because I have to use a condom, but even still, again, like they're just better than like what I feel like was available when I was a teenager.
I know, right? Exactly.
Early college. There's also, again, like Daisy Fertility Tracker is basically just, FAM. It's fertility awareness method. So it's, again, understanding, hey, well, if I just, finished up my cycle, like my capability to get pregnant like is pretty low.
Yeah.
But even still, it's like I'm still always for like be the most preventative as possible. Like babies are very expensive and they don't go away. So if pregnancy is a concern and you're not okay with it, like double up, like use Daisy and use condoms, or have multiple mechanisms in play.
Yeah.
Don't just ghost ride on Daisy, or don't just ghost ride on condoms. Like the more protection is always the better, because we know that the pill or IUD is like 99.9% accurate or whatever. Again, if life decides you want a baby, that's something you have to be okay with.
Yeah.
So the ultimate goal is just, again, can you understand your body, and then can you be empowered to make the best decisions that fit, for where you are in your lifestyle as well.
Yeah. We did go over thyroid. I'm seeing someone, we are going to read the comments. I know some people are like, are they even reading? I'm looking sometimes. We'll get back to them probably in the last 15 minutes. So even if you need to circle back, this will be up for 24 hours. And I'm going to get it up on YouTube as well, so that you can continue to circle back and just get it in your brain, because we're going over a lot of information.
All the information.
So much information. Gosh, and then I was gonna say something, and then I addressed that. I keep doing that. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. So the difference between, because I have a lot of friends who are like, well, yeah, birth control is bad, so I'm on copper IUD. Can we talk about why
Absolutely. I love talking about IUDs because, again, like people get really passionate about this stuff. And so especially, so basically there's two different types of IUDs. Either way, it's an intrauterine device. It's something that they're physically putting into the cervix. And so the mechanism of action is supposed to be a very localized effect where we prevent pregnancy. And so there's obviously the hormonal kind. So it's still typically they're progestin only. So same thing, it just contains the same synthetic chemicals you might find in the pill. But again, it's in this device, or you can have copper. And so the copper is non-hormonal. And so what people don't comprehend is that just because it's not hormonal doesn't mean it's not still negatively impacting your hormones, your thyroid. It's, you're still seeing mechanisms with the IUD where it's like, okay, it's the same idea in a different vehicle. So we still might see a disruption to our gut health.
Yeah.
We still might see, nutrient deficiencies. And so with the copper IUD, like it's so fascinating, because if you go in PubMed or if you try to study about it, there's not a whole lot of information. And so like what I've told people is I think that 10, 15, 20 years from now, you have all these people that are, yes, I love copper IUD. I think you're gonna have a lot of people that are like, ooh, I take it back, like, because again, it's just newer. Most people have had it maybe 5 to 10 years, so we don't have the data, on it quite yet. But if you Google copper toxicity, you will literally hit the jackpot on, page after page after page of women that more or less it was like, hey, I don't have any symptoms. I went on copper IUD. I started having X, Y, and Z symptom. I took out the IUD, and then everything instantly went back to normal, right? And so like that's the thing, is like people need to understand there's not a lot of studies done on women's health, because frankly, women's health has gotten kicked to the curb. Like it's very much become women's responsibility of like, oh, you're the one that can get pregnant, so you have to figure it out. Or same thing, like maybe you're a mom and so you get pregnant, you have a baby, and then right back under hormonal birth control you go. It's like, well, nobody's doing stuff for men. And like actually, like if you want to talk like, and it's crummy, but it's like they tried to come up with male birth controls and stuff like that, and dudes were like having mood issues, dudes were feeling crappy, and so it was like, yep, this isn't gonna work, and so somehow that
bring it on us.
Right, so somehow that responsibility piece fell into the laps of women, and like that's so unfortunate. But like I'll just say this, like I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of women, and I've yet to have a single woman that she decided the copper IUD wasn't right for her. And like I could show you freaky before and after transformations where it'd be like my favorite story to talk about is I had a client, I worked with her for 2 years, and it's like we had the nutrition dialed in, like she was following macros, like she was counting how much protein, carb, fat, and like so we adjusted her lifestyle. She was doing all the right things, eating vegetables at every meal, eating enough fiber. She adjusted to like lower intensity exercise, and so we were doing everything right. And like we had the conversation on the front end where it's like, I'm gonna try to be the least obtrusive. We're gonna try to do everything in our power. But if at one point, like, I don't have any more cards to give you, and this is still an issue, like, we need to consider, your IUD and consider making different things. And so sure enough, her husband is a rock star and opted to get a vasectomy, and so she got her IUD pulled. And I kid you not, within 3 weeks, she lost 10 pounds. Nothing changed. 10 pounds. So, same thing, the copper IUD, zinc and copper work in tandem in the body. And so, again, if you know that zinc is really, really crucial for skin, it's a potent antimicrobial, it's a potent antibacterial, there's so many things that it was like, again, after a few weeks, digestion for her got incredibly better. And she was doing all the sexy gut health protocols, right? Like we were, it was like, I take probiotics, I'm doing collagen, I'm doing bone broth, I do fermented foods. We were doing so much stuff for her liver as well. So like she was eating tons of cruciferous veggies, eating tons of broccoli sprouts, and again, just like all this sexy, complicated gut stuff, but like literally everything got better. And like she's not alone in that. Like that story holds true for every single person.
I have when they get off the IUD, the copper IUD, the non-hormonal
IUD. I will say the most interesting one to me, so the difference between the pill and IUD is that you do still sometimes ovulate on the IUD. And it changes over time. So how the IUD impacts your body initially upfront the first year, and then as time goes on is different. But I will say that for people on the IUD, when they decide to get it removed, it seems like they bounce back quicker, or it seems like it is a little bit easier. So again, like not sure why, of course, other than, again, it's a different introduction of the same synthetic chemicals, just in a different, manifestation. But I will say that, people with the IUD do tend to have a little bit easier time on the like post-birth control syndrome spectrum, which I find fascinating as well. But yeah, so many people, it's like I said, it's like they didn't understand, like even on if I take in a new client, like it'll be like, hey, what medications or prescriptions or stuff like that do you have? People won't mention like, oh yeah, I have an IUD, or oh yeah, I take the pill. So like I always have to clarify for that question too, because again, I think people just kind of like set and forget it, and forget that it's even a thing. But again, like that would just be my advice for you, is like nothing is right or wrong. It's just the question is it right for me? And so it's understanding your body, it's understanding how different things affect you. And so I wish that at 15 years old, there had been more resources, more education, more conversation, because then I wouldn't have spent the past 10 years suffering. But women aren't alone in that, and women don't understand their body, and so that's why we're here today.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's so much. Can you speak a little bit into, again, like, well, people were asking gut health, so I definitely want to get into that for a bit, and probiotics, so we will get to some of those. But one of the other things I was wondering is like how that all plays into, like, I'm sure that all plays into not having pain on your period.
Yes.
So touching on that again, because even you might not be throwing up, you might not be debilitated, but there's still like this, like, I need like Advil or something to help deal with the pain. So like, can you speak into that for people?
So, this isn't even specific to like women or women's health, really. It's like we are only as healthy as our internal GI. And so if we have an imbalance, so one thing that's super common is, again, hormonal birth control sets you up for basically stuff like H. pylori, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or candida, which is a yeast overgrowth, or like leaky gut, I feel like is a big, trigger word. People don't realize that it sets you up as a candidate for that, because again, it's just altering your gut flora. Therefore, you're more inclined to to be a little more imbalanced. But so the thing is, again, like it's a very common thing. If somebody comes in, they say, oh yeah, like I only go to the bathroom like once a week, or I only go to the bathroom, every 3 days, and you're like, that's not good. Like that's alarming. That should be a big red flag. But, again, like our body is this awesome vehicle where, it gets rid of like, I hate the word toxins because I feel like that's such like a keyword or buzzword or whatever. But again, if there's stuff coming into contact with the body that the body just wants to excrete, well, again, even if we talk from like an estrogen metabolism point, your body's trying to constantly filter all that out. So like your liver is this awesome little, if you want to think of it as like the sponge or, the Mr. Clean eraser of your body, like it's trying to kick out all the nasty, whether that's, alcohol, whether that's like, that processed, McDonald's hamburger, whatever you had, it's trying to kick out all the nasty. And so same thing, if it's getting time to ferment in there and you're like, yeah, I go to the bathroom like once every 3 days or 5 days. Well, guess what? Like, estrogen's going to be reabsorbed. And so that's why, like, a lot of people, maybe that's a good talking point, is like a lot of people don't realize that alcohol, we all love our bubbly, we all love, our wine, whatever. It actually, increases estrogen levels. And so that's why you might see, you want to talk about like the college 15 or stuff like that. Like people go off to college and it's like, oh, hey, like your boyfriend has man boobs, or like your boyfriend's got, quite the god, or same thing, with females obviously as well. Alcohol isn't super friendly to, friendly to our hormones and stuff like that. And so just understanding, again, it's not that alcohol is bad, it's just understanding like, well, what frequency should we drink it on, or like how often, can we get away with this? But again, if you're having really, really miserable periods, like that would be one of the things I'd say take out first is like, hey, like, why don't we decrease, our alcohol consumption? Or can we push it to, 1 day a week? Or can we push it to, once a month or something? Because again, it's like you might actually instantly see, the kickback from that is like, oh, like I feel a lot better. Oh, I'm not struggling, with certain symptoms.
Totally.
So alcohol is such a biggie. But same thing, that goes back to the liver. Like alcohol is very taxing on the liver. And so if you want to think of like a basketball game, it's like your liver dribbles the ball. It's supposed to pass it off to the gut, and then we should excrete it. We should go to the bathroom. And so the gut health stuff is so big. If you guys want another great resource, Dr. Ruscio's Healthy Gut, Healthy You. It's 400 pages. So literally, a Bible about the gut, but like same thing. It's just like the period repair manual where it's like, hey, I have this particular symptom. How do I fix it? How do I remedy it? Stuff like that. So anybody that's struggling with gut stuff, absolutely check out Dr. Ruscio. He has a podcast as well. Such a great resource about everything, gut health, digestion, all of that. But the same thing, we talked about earlier, like you have to be so careful because if you go and you do all the gut health stuff, you could actually make your gut health worse. So like if you want to think of your, internally your gut is kind of like this field of flowers. If we keep overwatering the flowers and you're like, I take probiotics, I drink all the kombucha, I drink collagen 5 million times a day and bone broth and fermented foods, like you can just as easily overgrow it. You can overgrow the wrong things. So it's kind of, again, like that's one of those, like if you're struggling with gut stuff, like work with a talented coach, like don't try to trek through it alone, like find a doctor. And same goes for all of this, like if you're not having success with your doctor, like break up with them, go find another one. Like there are, it's called not NFPs, it's I want to say non-fertility, whatever, it's NFP, but basically their practice is that they don't believe in birth control. And so these are doctors where, they're going to sit down with you and they're going to look at, your diet, your lifestyle and stuff like that, and try to help you get pregnant naturally, or try to get you natural family planning. There we go. I was like wrong track there. Natural family planning. Don't be afraid. Like if you go to your doctor and you're like, hey, I'm having, XYZ symptom. I think it's my birth control. Your doctor is going to be like, no, you're crazy. Like they make money off of it. Like, let's just say it like it is also. Like with any doctor and any prescription, they make money off of it. So of course they're going to be a little bit biased. So like the good doctors do exist. You might just have to date around, or same thing, look for something more in like the functional diagnostic, or like again like the all holistic natural, like those are the doctors that we probably are gonna have a little bit better success with.
So true. Okay, so now I want to scroll through and see some of your guys' questions. Do you think the copper IUD affects your sexual appetite?
Yes, absolutely. So, and it's a couple different mechanisms, but like that's the irony of all birth control methods, is that like hey, you don't have to worry about having a baby and your sex drive just becomes this giant goose egg. There are tons of ways to naturally, improve your sex drive. Maca is a really great supplement that you can literally just throw in smoothies.
I love putting maca in my smoothies.
You can, cook with it, you can bake with it, stuff like that. But these are all, again, specific things. Like when you check out these educational resources, like all of these books are 300 to 400 pages. So like you're gonna find your specific answer, with stuff like that. Ooh, I like the question about the thyroid. So somebody asked basically, do you have any suggestions if you have thyroid problems? Do you have any advice with your hormones? My biggest one would, again, consider working with a doctor, consider transitioning off of hormonal birth control, because again, from an N=1, I never pulled optimal thyroid values while I was on hormonal birth control. And I'm definitely not alone in that. So that would be my number one. With thyroid stuff, it's basically just understanding your body is overstressed and overstretched. And so, if we took 100 individuals that were all healthy, whether male or female, if we went to a caloric deficit, if we said, hey, you're eating 2,000 calories, we're going to eat 500 calories less, all 100 of those individuals would see a decrease in their thyroid function. And so a lot of times it's not even so much that, we have a thyroid issue. It might just be that you're under eating. And so, again, if you want to think about the analogy of hey, I'm on an island, I'm stranded, and I have only a backpack of food. Well, you're gonna motion and you're gonna be rationing out every last little piece of food. And so very much, a lot of people have kind of said stereotypically oh, women should eat 1,200 calories, men should eat 1,500 calories. It's I'm 5'3", 128 pounds, and if I eat less than 2,500 calories, I lose weight. And a lot of people will be like, whoa, what? I've never eaten, more than 1,200 calories in my life.
You also work out like a beast, so let's just put that out there.
But even still, again, I've been working with clients for so long, and most females don't realize, your body has a minimum requirement to sustain. So even even if you are sedentary all day, for any female, you should likely be eating 1,800, 1,900, 2,000 calories minimum just for your body to be happy and function and stuff like that. Especially with thyroid stuff as well, carbohydrate intake and fat intake is so very important. And that goes just for hormonal health as well. So, again, this isn't anything you're going to see in PubMed per se, but anecdotally, what we kind of see is that, if you're chronically eating, 30 to 40 to 50 grams of fat, you might tip into that tier where you're oh, I haven't had a menstrual cycle in a few years. Fat is a precursor for specifically cholesterol is a precursor for sex hormones, and so it's very important. We don't need to have a keto, super high fat diet. But again, kind of, I like to think of it more in minimums, where it's historically we see that, maybe 60 to 70 grams of fat as a minimum for females is going to let you have optimal, thyroid function, optimal hormone function, have really good menstrual cycles.
So you should eat carbs?
You should eat carbs as well. And so Laura Bryden has been amazing about this, and I post about this a lot as well, but just basically talking about again, the female body is so much different than, the male body is. And so our thyroid really likes carbohydrates. And so it doesn't mean everybody should eat, 300 grams of carbs, or everybody should be, smashing carbohydrates all day long. But again, it's hard to do studies on this, because it's how do you compare somebody that, sits at a desk all day long,
so different.
Maybe they have kids, and maybe their workout is, I go for a walk, versus your CrossFit Games athletes are
exactly.
I train 7 hours a day, all I do
So
is
different.
exercise. It's just totally different. But even, kind of what we've seen is that, minimum something of, 150 to 250 grams of carbs, which would be, if you want, to throw around some numbers, it's a banana is usually around 26 grams of carbs, a serving of oatmeal right around 30 grams of carbs. Serving of sweet potatoes would be, 20 to 30 grams of carbs. So again, do we need to carb load all day long? No. But again, just even if we don't track macros, we don't specifically track metrics of exactly how much protein, carb, and fat we eat, doing a double check where it's every single meal, is there a protein? Do we have a big hunk of meat? Is there a carbohydrate? Do we have some sort of, rice, potato? Could we have some fresh fruit? Could we have oatmeal? Could we have, some sort of gluten-free pasta? something of that nature. And then same thing, on the fat spectrum, it's like, don't, please don't just be eating peanut butter all day long, eat lots of avocados, olive oil, grass-fed beef, grass-fed bison, salmon, so like more healthier sources.
Piss some people off, or...
Oh yeah, I'm sure. But same thing, are we eating, a vegetable at every meal? Like,
yes.
Our meals should actually primarily be vegetables, and then like the side pieces should be, our meat, or the carbohydrates and the fats.
Yeah, someone said like use meat as a condiment,
yes,
which I actually really
absolutely
like.
And that's a good discussion point too, ladies, is like, if I tagged like 3 specific populations that typically don't eat enough protein, it would be your females, it would be your vegetarians, and then obviously your vegans. So like for your vegetarian and vegan, people out there, like you guys need to be eating tons and tons of fish. It's like a non-negotiable for me. Like I will not take on a vegetarian or vegan client unless they're willing to do, well, obviously vegans, don't believe in eating eggs and stuff like that. So I guess I don't work with vegans, unfortunately. I have a special person that like, that's their rock star people, and so I refer out for specific vegan clients. But like vegetarians, it's like non-negotiable, where it's like, hey, you need to be doing 2 protein shakes a day. If we can get eggs in at our meals, some sort of fish, but like it's so important. So like you're trying to get basically like right around your body weight in grams of protein. So like I'm 5'3", I basically weigh 130 pounds, so I need to get on 130 grams of protein. And so what that ends up looking like is, I'll typically have 4 ounces of meat at breakfast, 4 ounces of meat at lunch, 4 ounces at dinner, and then like a protein shake, and then sometimes it'll get filled in by other foods as well. But like that would be my advice for so many of you ladies, is like, we can say, oh, I'm gonna eat better, or I'm gonna eat clean, and it's like, well, what does that mean? If we quantify it, then we can't argue with what that means. And so there's tons of different food tracking apps out there. There's MyFitnessPal. I've been using Chronometer and love it. But same thing, can we through our food, can we actually get a conception of like, oh, I thought, I eat a lot of calories, or I eat a lot of fat, or I eat a lot of carbohydrates, like I don't actually eat as much as I eat, then you can adjust your diet accordingly.
Okay, so we have like 2 more minutes. Let's hit like a couple questions. And then maybe we'll try to do like a couple story question, answer some stories at lunch. Someone was asking, weaning off metformin.
Ooh, that's gonna be
too heavy.
It's just one of those, like, you need to work with a doctor. Like with any of this, again, like don't just like stop doing what you're doing. Like you need to be working with a skilled coach. You need to have a doctor in your corner. So with all of this, again, like we live in a very cool era where we want to empower you. We want you to have the knowledge to go out and live your best life, but like don't try to do it. Like don't be like, hey, on Tuesday I'm just gonna stop taking the pill, or hey, on Tuesday I'm just gonna stop taking it. Like you have a prescription, and so you need to be working closely with a doctor. You need to have people in your corner. Absolutely.
Totally. And we'll put all like the things that she talked about for resources, so like the app and everything like that. We'll put that in a story. Let's see. Intermittent fasting.
So intermittent fasting is literally just a shortened window of eating. I don't really recommend it for females, to be perfectly honest. This is, again, in that category where you talk about, where something that works really well for the male population doesn't work as well for the female side. So again, most people don't realize that they're not eating enough food. Every single person that walks in the door for nutrition coaching, it's pretty easy, because they're like, wow, well, you're eating 12 or 1,300 calories, and according to kind of your activity level and your lifestyle, like you should probably be eating double that. So for a lot of people, we're actually doing your reverse diet and slowly taking up their food intake and getting them back to a healthier and safer space. But intermittent fasting, like, it's just a tool. It's a shortened window of eating. That's it. Nothing special.
It depends on how you do it too, and if you are getting the correct nutrients in. There are new studies out there that's showing that it has helped with people who have breast cancer. So it has helped with women, but it's a shorter. It's not as long of a window for without eating as it is for men. So men can go like 16 hours, women it's more like 12 hours without eating.
Yep.
So it's just different window as well.
And maybe just like a good way to frame it too is like, again, it's just a tool. So like
Yeah.
there's 1,000 ways to skin a
So
cat.
many.
One of my good friends in real life like made this awesome infographic, and so it basically talked about, you know, like it was like comparing like keto, paleo, intermittent fasting, you know, like all these different things. And so like the big takeaway was like, it works because, you know, can you be consistent? Can you be compliant? Cool, because it doesn't matter like ultimately what you do. It just matters, can we do it consistently, and can you stick with it?
And it's dependent on your body. Like everyone gets to assess their own, like go work with someone, find out your own body, and listen, tune in. What is your body actually telling you? Because it will tell you a lot of information.
Yep. So I think a lot of people with Instagram and stuff like that, you know, somebody will post up the diet they're doing or the macros they're following or whatever. And so like people try to just go do that. And it's like, no, like everybody is so individual. Because again, you know, I'm hypothyroid, and, you know, yet I can eat 300 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
You know, I actually 300 to 400 grams of carbs is my usual. But then, you know, you'll run into people that maybe they can only eat, you know, 250 grams of carbs. And so it's, you know, everybody is so different.
So different.